Hey there and welcome back. How everyone's been talking about this new social media platform called Blue Sky?
Yeah, it's like all the buzz right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with everything that's been going on over at Twitter, since it became X.
Right. I think people are kind of looking for a new place to hang out online.
Exactly. And Blue Sky is kind of stepping into that space, like offering something different. It seems like everybody just kind of looked at social media and said, okay, there's got to be a better way. And well, we're here to dive deep into all that, into Blue Sky,
Uh,
and, see if it actually has a better way. We've got a pretty interesting mix of sources for this deep dive. We found a YouTube video by this tech enthusiast who seems pretty into Blue Sky.
oh, cool.
Yeah, and then there's this article on, like, a hip-hop blog.
Huh. Interesting. Didn't expect that.
Yeah, right. And, of course, we've got, like, the more, nuts and bolts stuff. Like, we found a comparison guide on Social Bee, and then somebody on Medium wrote this whole personal reflection about, like, why they switched from Twitter to Blue Sky.
It's a really diverse set of sources.
Yeah, and what we really want to do is give you, the listener, like a clear picture of what Blue Sky is all about, like how it works, how it compares to everything else out there, and ultimately, whether it's something you should even bother with.
Yeah. I mean, with all the changes in social media lately, it's hard to keep up.
Totally. So
Uh,
first things first, right? Like what I as Blue Sky keep seeing it described as this decentralized social network, but
Right.
what does that even mean for the average person? Like, what does that actually look like in your feed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's where it starts to get really interesting. Like with the old Twitter or Facebook, it's one giant company that controls everything. All your data, all the algorithms, like the whole experience. But with Blue Sky, it's different. They're using this decentralized approach, which basically means you get to choose your own servers.
So, like, you pick where your data lives.
Yeah, kind of. It's almost like choosing like your own neighborhood, but online.
Okay, that's actually a really helpful analogy. So it's not just one big corporation calling all the shots.
Right. You actually have more of a say in how your data is handled
Yeah.
and who's like governing the platform you're on. And I think that's appealing to a lot of people, especially now with all the concerns about data privacy and corporate control.
It's like finally having a choice,
Yeah.
in how your social media experience actually unfolds.
Mm.
And here's something I found kind of interesting. Blue Sky actually started as a project within Twitter itself.
Wait, really?
Yeah, but then it like branched out and became its own independent thing, and now it's being run by this Jay Graber.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her. She's really leading the charge on this whole decentralization thing.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? Like what started as this little project inside a huge platform is now like pioneering this whole new approach to social media.
Totally. And people are paying attention. Like our sources say that Blue Sky's already hit 10 million users. Yeah. Which, I mean, I know it's still dwarfed by like Threads. They have like 175 million.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah. But it does make you wonder, like, why are people choosing Blue Sky? Especially when Threads has that meta backing.
Right. Well, I think a lot of it comes down to, the whole Twitter situation.
Yeah.
I mean, even in that YouTube video we watched, the guy was saying how much he hated that Twitter's, feed was just constantly filled with all this negativity and political stuff.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, it's like everybody's just exhausted with the drama.
It feels like people are just looking for a space where they can, like, actually curate their own experience.
Yeah.
And have more meaningful conversations without all that noise.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's a whole Elon Musk thing, too, like all the changes he's made to Twitter.
Right. And that whole blocking thing, too.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why.
a mess.
Yeah, I mean, that Forbes article we read really went into detail on that. But basically, the way blocking works on X now, it's like, even if you block someone, they can still see your posts.
Which, I mean, what's even the point of blocking then?
Right. It's like saying, I don't want you to talk to me, but feel free to eavesdrop on everything I say. Like, no thanks.
Exactly. So it's no surprise that people are looking for alternatives. And Blue Sky is offering that more traditional, like, actually effective approach to blocking.
Hmm.
It's about giving users back control over who they interact with.
Absolutely. It seems like control is a big theme with Blue Sky.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. So, okay, we've got a good sense of why people are interested in Blue Sky. But, like, how does it actually compare to the other options out there? Like, let's start with the obvious one, Twitter, X now.
Okay, yeah. Well, one of the biggest differences, and I think this is a major draw for a lot of people, is that Blue Sky has 0 ads.
Wait, seriously? No ads at all.
Nope. Like, think about that for a second. No sponsored posts clogging up your feed, no targeted ads following you around everywhere. It's just a much cleaner experience. Like, all of our sources mention this.
Yeah, that was definitely a big thing in that YouTube video, too. The guy was, like, raving about how refreshing it was to just scroll through his feed without being bombarded with ads.
It's not just about the aesthetics either. It was like a fundamental difference in the philosophy of the platform. Like, they're actually prioritizing the user experience over profits, which is,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, it's a pretty stark contrast to the ad-driven model that, dominates most social media, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, no ads, better blocking features.
Yeah.
What else makes Blue Sky different from, the ghosted Twitter?
Well, this is where I think it gets really interesting. Blue Sky is all about algorithmic choice. Like, both the Social Bee and the TechCrunch articles talked about how customizable the feeds are on Blue Sky.
You can actually control what you see.
Right. It's not just about following certain accounts. It's like you have this granular control over the types of content that show up in your feed and how it's all organized. You're not just stuck with whatever some mysterious algorithm decides you should see.
It's like you're actually in charge of your own online experience.
Right, exactly. And it all comes back to that whole decentralization thing. Like, it's about empowering the users.
So, okay, Blue Sky's looking like a pretty solid contender, at least compared to Twitter.
Yeah.
But what about the other platforms out there? Like, how does it stack up against Threads, for example?
Well, the most obvious difference there is just the sheer size of the user base. Threads, with that whole meta machine behind it, they already have, what was it, 175 million users.
Yeah, it's crazy. And Blue Sky's only at like 10 million, right?
Yeah, so that's a pretty big gap. But the thing is, that Medium article we read brought up a really interesting point. A lot of people are actually kind of wary of that Meta connection. Like, Meta doesn't have the best track record when it comes to data privacy.
Right, that's true. So people are hesitant to just jump on another meta platform.
Exactly. They're worried about, like, their data being collected and used in ways they might not even know about. And I think Blue Sky is, like, intentionally or not, they're capitalizing on that. Like, by making decentralization and user control their main focus, they're tapping into this growing desire for more transparency and control over our online lives.
That's a good point. So even though Threads has this massive user base, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody trusts them.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got Twitter, which is, well, Twitter. And we've got Threads, which is huge, but maybe not so trustworthy. What about Mastodon? That's another one that keeps popping up.
Yeah, Mastodon. That one's interesting because it's also decentralized, right? Like Blue Sky.
Right, but even though they're both decentralized, they seem to have different vibes. A lot of our sources said that Mastodon can be kind of overwhelming, especially for new users.
Yeah, I remember that Medium article called it like a confused mess or something.
Yeah, something like that. It sounds like it can be a bit daunting.
Yeah.
Especially if you're used to those, like, really streamlined social media experiences.
So decentralized, but maybe not so user-friendly.
It's almost like Mastodon's biggest strength, that whole decentralization thing, is also kind of its weakness. It can lead to a feeling of, like, fragmentation,
Yeah.
Like, it lacks cohesion.
So instead of being one big platform, it's like a bunch of little islands.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think Blue Sky is trying to find a middle ground. Like, they want the benefits of decentralization, but without sacrificing usability.
So they're aiming for something that feels familiar and inviting, but still gives users more control.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about what Blue Sky is, why people are interested in it, and how it compares to some of the other big names out there. But now I want to know, like, what's it actually like to use?
Right. What's the vibe on Blue Sky? What are people talking about? What's it like to scroll through your feed?
Yeah, tell me. Well, from what I've seen, it sounds like they've done a good job of keeping things simple. Both the YouTube video and that Medium article talked about how clean and straightforward the interface is. Like, visually, it's actually pretty similar to Twitter.
Oh, okay. So not a total redesign.
Right. No clutter, no confusing features, just like the basics. Posting, connecting with people.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense, right? If you're trying to win over people who are already used to Twitter, you don't want to throw a completely different platform at them.
Yeah, totally. And it seems like Blue Sky has managed to strike a good balance between being familiar but still fresh. Like in the YouTube video, the guy was really impressed with how much faster Blue Sky felt compared to Twitter.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, Twitter can be kind of slow sometimes.
Right. And nobody wants to wait around for things to load, especially when you're, like, trying to keep up with a conversation or whatever.
Yeah, speed is definitely key.
Totally. And here's something that I thought was really interesting. Even though Blue Sky has way fewer users than some of the other platforms, like Threads, it sounds like the engagement is actually really high. Like in the YouTube video, the guy was saying that the community on Blue Sky felt way more active and engaged than what he was used to on Twitter.
Huh. That's cool. So it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about the people who are using it.
Exactly. Like, maybe it's not just about escaping the negativity on other platforms. Maybe it's also about finding a space where you can, like, actually connect with people who share your interests and values.
Yeah, and where you can actually control what you see, too. We got to talk more about that whole customizable feeds thing. That seems like a really big deal.
Yeah, totally. And it goes way beyond just, like, choosing who to follow. It's about having control over, like, the types of content that show up in your feed and how it's organized.
So you're not just at the mercy of some, like, black box algorithm.
Yeah.
You actually get to decide what you see.
Exactly. And I think that kind of control is like really empowering, you know? It
Yeah.
allows you to create a social media experience that actually aligns with like your own interests and your own values.
Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle on what Blue Sky is, how it compares to other platforms, and what it's like to actually use it. But what about the future? Like, where does Blue Sky go from here?
Well, that TechCrunch article we read had some pretty big ideas about that. They were talking about how Blue Sky wants to become federated.
Federated, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's kind of a techie term. But basically, it means they want to connect different communities and servers together within the Blue Sky ecosystem.
So, like, instead of being limited to one central platform, you could interact with users from all sorts of different Blue Sky communities.
Exactly. It's like creating this whole network of interconnected online towns, each with its own, like, unique focus and culture.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get. So it's like decentralization on an even bigger scale?
Yeah. Right. And that could have some pretty huge implications for, like, how we think about social media. Like, instead of joining one giant platform, it would be more about choosing the specific communities that you want to be a part of.
And it would shift the power away from those big corporations and back to the users.
Exactly. And I think that's a really exciting prospect, you know? But it's not without its challenges, of course. Like, building that kind of seamless experience across a network of independent servers is not going to be easy.
Right, and then there's the whole question of, like, how do they actually fund the platform without resorting to ads?
Yeah, that's a big one. But it sounds like they're committed to finding alternative ways to do it. Like, both the TechCrunch and the Verge articles mentioned that they're exploring things like subscription services and community-driven funding.
So basically, they're trying to rewrite the rules of the game.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's what makes this whole Blue Sky thing so fascinating. We're witnessing the emergence of this, like, new kind of social media, one that's built on decentralization, user control, and community. It's really exciting to see where it goes.
It really is. But even beyond all the technical stuff, there are even bigger questions to think about here.
Uh-huh.
Like, what happens to things like content moderation in a decentralized world,
Oh, that's a good one.
right? Like, who decides what's acceptable and what's not when there's no central authority?
Yeah, and what about the implications for free speech and data privacy? These are all things that Blue Sky, and really all of us, are going to have to figure out as we move towards this more decentralized future.
It feels like we're just at the beginning of something really big here. Blue Sky might be more than just another social media platform. It could be like a fundamental shift in how we think about interacting online.
It really could. And those big questions we just raised, those aren't just theoretical, you know, they have real world consequences. Like, if Blue Sky actually takes off, it could completely change the balance of power on the internet, put more control in the hands of the users and less in the hands of these massive corporations.
Exactly. It's like almost like we're back in those early days of the internet when everything was new and like kind of uncharted territory. There's a sense of excitement, but also a little bit of uncertainty.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's so important to be having these conversations now. We need to be thinking critically about what we want this decentralized future to look like.
So what do you think? Are you ready to jump into the Blue Sky world?
I mean, are you tired of the algorithms, the ads, the constant negativity?
Are you looking for something different, something that gives you more control and maybe feels a little bit more, well, human?
Or maybe you're just curious. You want to see where this whole thing goes. Either way, you know, we definitely encourage you to check it out for yourself, see what all the buzz is about.
But most importantly, like, don't just scroll mindlessly, you know? Actually think about what you're seeing. Ask questions. engage in the conversation.
Yeah, because the future of social media, it's being shaped right now. And platforms like Blue Sky, they're leading the way. Who knows? Maybe you'll even be a part of shaping that future.
And on that note, that's our deep dive into Blue Sky. Thanks for joining us. It really does feel like we're on the verge of something big, you know? Like Blue Sky, it's not just another social media platform. It's like a whole different way of thinking about how we interact online.
Yeah, and those big questions we were just talking about, they're not just hypotheticals, they have
Yeah.
real world implications. Like,
Right.
what if Blue Sky actually becomes like the dominant social media platform?
Yeah, what happens then?
It could change everything, the power dynamics, the way information spreads, like it could really shift the balance away from these giant corporations and give more power to the users.
And what about stuff like, content moderation? Like who decides what's okay and what's not when there's no, like, central authority?
Right, that's a huge question. And then there's free speech, data privacy, like there are so many things we need to figure out as we move towards this more decentralized future.
It feels like we're kind of going back to the Wild West of the internet, when everything was new and there were no rules.
Yeah, a little bit. There's definitely that sense of excitement, but also a bit of like healthy apprehension.
Totally. And that's why I think these conversations are so important,
Right.
We need to be talking about this stuff now before it's too late. We need to decide what we want this decentralized future to look like.
Exactly. So, yeah. What do you think? Are you ready to give Blue Sky a try?
Are you tired of the same old social media BS? The algorithms, the ads, the
Are
negativity.
you looking for something different, something that feels, I don't know, more authentic, more human?
Or maybe you're just curious. Maybe you just want to see where this whole thing goes.
Whatever your reason, we definitely recommend checking it out. See what all the buzz is about.
But don't just like passively scroll,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
Actually engage with it. Think about what you're seeing. Ask questions.
Yeah, because the future of social media, it's being written right now. And platforms like Blue Sky, they're leading the way.
And who knows, maybe you'll be a part of shaping that future. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.